We are set to begin? Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Today is Tuesday, July 19th, 2016. It is approximately 20 after 12 in the afternoon. We are in the Galloway House at the Alms House, Galloway Room at the Alms House, headquarters of the Historical Society of Baltimore County. Today we are interviewing Bud Cornell. My name is Sally Riley. I'm a volunteer here at the Historical Society. Our witness today is James Long. Good afternoon, Bud.
Good afternoon.
What is your full name?
Evart, France, F-R-A-N-T-Z, Cornell.
And where were you born?
Probably momentarily in Baltimore City, but mostly everything else is in Lutherville.
Your parents were living in Lutherville when you were born?
Yeah.
When were you born?
1932, January the 30th.
What is your mother's full name?
Marie Agnes France Cornell.
And your father's full name?
Evart Abbott Cornell.
When and where was your mother born?
As I understand it, she was born in Lutherville.
And your father?
Born in Hamden, Baltimore City.
So both of them are natives of the Baltimore area.
Yes.
And your mother's family goes back a fair distance in Baltimore County?
Yeah, grandfather France came out of that gang up in Cockeysville. And I don't tell you the truth, I don't know how far back they go, but they go a ways.
Where was the house that your parents lived in when you were born?
That was 1612 Riderwood Lutherville Drive in Lutherville, Maryland, 210903.
And how did they come by that house?
They came by that house because my grandfather France apparently had $10,000, and he said, if you will take care of me and let me live with you the rest of my life, I'll build a house for you. So they said, okay. So he built the house. He took the plans out of some book that was very popular at that time. That is, well, we left it at the house for the next people that lived there. And you'll see a lot of houses like it. You look around. He doubled the size of everything, which made it very nice, very nice. And you can tell that today by looking at the several houses that have been built beside it. They're about half size. Yeah. Did a nice job. We were most fortunate.
Well, the ground around there is kind of rocky. Did he dig the ground out himself?
No. He had a gentleman from the African American neighborhood come in with these horses and dynamite and blow the thing apart.
You've shown me the house. What was it like to live in there when you were a child?
Well, you have to understand that there was a stream in back of the house, and it kind of got organized just on the other side of the railroad tracks and came down under the tracks, became Rowan Run, and went on down to Lake Rowan. And that's where we spent hours and hours and hours, because they kept building these dams, and Mother Nature kept washing them out, and we rebuilt them. So.
Who's the we?
Well, Charlie Jost was one of them. He lived across the street above the store with his parents. Billy Seeds was around a lot. And there are a bunch of guys I haven't thought of in years and don't recall. Peter Parker was one of them. to scout camp, which is something, at that time, he was the only one whose family had the money to send him to scout camp. So he went to scout camp, came back, and he was an Eagle Scout. I think he was the first Eagle Scout that we had. It was pretty neat.
These were all children that lived in the Lutherville community with you?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any siblings?
Had a sister. I understand my mother, we had a brother in between us, but apparently he died at childbirth.
Was your sister older or younger than you were?
Oh, she was much older, about 2 years, 2.5 years older than me.
Overall, what was Lutherville like when you were growing up as a child?
For me, Lutherville was a great place to grow up. They had a Boy Scout troop. They had a lot of activities at church. I went to St. Paul's Lutheran at that time. And the college grounds were managed by Colonel Galston. And Colonel Galston had a granddaughter who was my age and in my class at school. And we probably embarrassed her a lot because her grandfather was always chasing us off college property. But they had some really neat fields there, and they were good for football and soccer, and we appreciated the maintenance that they put in them, and we played on them. And then Mr. Galston would come charging down the hill from Seminary Avenue on his horse, and we would go through the hedge and disappear out into space. Nice.
Did you ever try to play in any of the college buildings?
We did a lot of basketball in a wooden structure, about 2 stories, but there was no second floor in it. They used it as a theater, and it did have basketball nets inside, and we go through the windows and play basketball until somebody who wasn't a member of our crew showed up and we disappeared. We went all directions, but mostly off the property. We tried to find the shortest distance to get off the property. I don't know what you're talking about, sir.
You said you lived across from the railroad tracks. What was the area around the railroad like? Did you know who lived in the railroad station or who took care of the railroad station?
We pretty much knew everybody. It wasn't that large. Country Club Park was Morris Avenue, a little bit, maybe a block or 2 blocks of Green Spring, up 100 feet or so of Towson, and it only went back maybe 2 houses when it got to Towson Avenue. So it was relatively pretty small. Most of the roads were not in. I think the contractor was a little ticked because somehow grandfather France got permission to build the house where he did near the railroad station, which was greatly appreciated by his son-in-law later, because my father would ride the train to work, and there it was. And all he had to do was trot down there and jump on. He didn't have to run from Towson Avenue 2 long blocks and try to make it. But so be it.
Where did you go to elementary school?
One of the old Lutherville elementary schools, this one is the 2-story square building is across from the fire department. That was the school I went to. My sister went to that school. My mother went to an earlier one that was on Bologna Avenue, the second house in from Seminary Avenue on Bologna. I think last I heard it belonged to a member of the Bowie family.
Mm.
John Schock grew up and lived in the one next to it. He was a high-ranking something in the Board of Education. I forget what John was. Highly respected, low-key. He could nail you and you wouldn't realize it until he'd gone. as you were bleeding out. He was good.
What was the elementary school like
As a student or a teacher?
as a student?
As a student,
As a student.
we had recess.
Did you have, how many classrooms were in the school?
When I was at Lutherville Elementary, we had 2 classrooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, and high school were in the high school, which was the one on Central Avenue at the time.
So you had 3 classes in one room?
Yeah.
And 1 teacher?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, in those days, nothing to it. These days, a little different.
You said that you all played soccer and football on the fields of the female college. What other games did you all play when you were little?
Well, there were some of us who had gotten into lacrosse, and we generally stayed down at the bottom of the front lawn. It's on Front Avenue. Stay away from Mr. Gelston as far as we could, and we would play in there. Mostly we just whipped the ball around. There weren't enough of us to really have a game, so not in those days.
Did you join any special groups when you were younger?
Boy Scouts,
Boy Scouts?
that's what we had.
How long were you in Boy Scouts?
A long time. I think I hit 50 years because I started out the usual way with the Lutherville troop. And as a matter of fact, I started going to Boy Scout meetings because my father was working with them. I think I was 10 years old. And they met in the real estate shack, if you will, which was an old trailer that they put up on I don't know, some kind of pillars. It was about this far off the ground, as I recall. That was on the corner of Rideaway Drive and Morris Avenue. Yeah, on the west side. And that was just sitting there, so they let the Boy Scouts go in there. So the Boy Scouts were in there until Mr. and Mrs. Weisbrod gave them some property on Frankie and Ridgely, I think it was. And on the corner we built our scout shack.
You all built it?
We built it. We had the manpower, we had the knowledge. Because there were men on the council who knew how to do it, and we did it.
Very good.
It was neat. Chased the snakes, chased the skunks. We had a problem with the skunks.
You had skunks?
Well, yeah, they had the dead skunk on the side, and I wanted the tail. So I cut the tail off. And nobody had come around me.
I wonder why. Did you learn any little ditties while you were in Boy Scouts?
Ditties?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Like Little Willie?
Little Willie. Actually, I learned Little Willie years later. There were a lot of Boy Scout songs, and we'd sing a couple of them at every meeting. And a lot of them at scout camp, and you know what, right now, I do not recall.
Okay. So you finished elementary school and you went off to high school. Where did you go to high school?
One of the old Towson high schools, the one that's on Central Avenue.
The one that's the Bicota house now?
I could have, yeah.
And how did you get from Lutherville to Towson High School?
7th grade, mostly, I rode the bus. High school, mostly, I hitchhiked or walked. A lot of times I'd walk, I forget what we call it. It was the old railroad road that went from, I think I went into Monia or Cockeysville, I guess. Went from Cockeysville to Towson.
There was a railroad that went from Cockeysville to Towson?
Yeah. Matter of fact, if you start at the Catholic Church and go down
In Towson?
in Towson, and you walk down the road towards the courthouse, a occasionally you can see a rail sticking up.
Really?
Yeah, they just cover them up.
Well, now, where did the railroad cut through Lutherville?
Beside the fire department, where it is today, down Division,
How big?
yeah.
You'd never know there was a railroad through there now. Did
That's
you?
because you're not old enough.
You're right. Did you play any sports in high school?
Lacrosse, yeah. Played lacrosse and I was manager or something for, what did my chemistry teacher do, basketball. I did for basketball, as long as basketball season was there, I was in good shape in chemistry because the manager was the chem teacher. But everything fell apart when the season was over and reality struck again. I didn't have spit about chemistry.
Who was your coach in lacrosse?
Jim Leslie. There was another young man who came in and worked with him because mostly Jim was actually the coach of Catonsville High School, even though he lived in Towson. That's where he was teaching, so he was a coach over there. And 7 o'clock in the morning, he would have workout with us. But when game time came, he wasn't around. He was over there with those kids from Catonsville. And we were kind of floating, although there was a young man that would be there for games. He said, well, what did he know about what you could do? Not much.
So you all just relied on your lessons from Mr. Leslie.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you ever see any of your high school classmates anymore?
I'm going to say yes because I do. I see Jonna Suter here. She's the one I see most. Sometimes when I go down the Eastern Shore, I see Lee Thomas, who lived down in Stoneleigh. He was an attackman. He was really good. Man, you could see that stick straight up going past the goal. You hit that stick, you had to know he had a goal. He was really good. He and Gordon Pereira. What happened to Gordon? Gordon died. He was a doctor, a medical doctor. Who else was up there? Jim Kenty.